Hello again, everybody, and welcome to yet another amazing connection with Jessie Czebotar. Hi, Jessie. I'm very happy to hear you. To have you back again with us. Very grateful for that.
Thank you.
And I look forward to today's chat, because I think today what we want to do is just maybe have some random questions, just certain things that I've sort of skipped out and a couple of other people have asked me to put forward to you. So maybe if we can just have that kind of a day where we asking questions and kind of going in whatever direction it takes us. Are you cool with that?
I am. That sounds great.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. The first thing that I would like to know about, which I actually didn't hear about until last week when you and Reggie were on the call, you mentioned the Rainbow Girls and the Job Boys and something wives. Did I miss out on something wives there? I just have the word wives with a question mark next to it.
I don't know if we said anything. There isn't a group by that name or anything.
Okay, then maybe just the Rainbow Girls and the Job Boys. What on earth is that?
Yeah, so they're kind of comparable to Boy Scout or Girl Scout clubs, but they are through the Masonic lodges. So usually they're children whose fathers or mothers are part of the Masonic groups. And, they would just grow up. If you're a girl, you grow up in the Rainbow Girls, and they really promote and encourage girls being active in their society and community. Both groups are focused on a lot of community service. So that's where the kids that grow up as Masons learn to really engage in humanitarian efforts and endeavors, and learning how to raise money and finances that would support different community or humanitarian efforts.
So again, a little bit of a cover.
Somewhat. I have a friend who really grew up in that, and for her it was a very good experience. She never experienced anything bad or evil through that. It was something that really helped her in her life. So it's hard to say. It seems like, the program itself is very much like a Boy Scout or Girl Scout program. So it may just be select groups. If there's children who have experienced abuse through these, it might be just select groups, as far as I can tell at this point.
Cool. So it's not anything that goes on in the system, like, for example, the Monarch programming and stuff like that. This is nothing like that.
As far as I can tell, it's not. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Something which I'm curious about, is there a difference between Luciferianism and Satanism?
Yes. According to scripture, the Bible gives Satan many names. So his original angelic name is Lucifer. He may also be called the serpent of old, or later transitioned into Satan or Saturn, and he got connected with the sun god Ra through the Egyptian beliefs. So there's a lot of different names. So the Luciferians practice more of the ancient, we still might call them satanic worship or worshipers, but theirs is more of the, into the ancient things with that. They get more into the black magic, whereas some of the current Satanists may not even believe Satan is a real being. They may just be using his name as kind of a means to make a point. There's a lot of differences. It's hard for me to kind of break it down into pieces. but you know, the Luciferians are going to be the ones who are into Aleister Crowley's books, the black magic books, the grimoires, the spells. um, the Satanists kind of dabble into some of that stuff, but they're more, well, the Luciferians are more hidden. The Satanists are going to be more out in the open for people to
Okay.
see. A lot of them are activists and, you know, really proactive in things. Um, and it can be, you know, it's not just necessarily a group mentality. Sometimes they're, you know, it's individuals who, you know, they relate more to the one name of Satan or the devil versus the other. So it just depends on which one they find more meaningful.
Hmm.
I don't know if that
Interesting.
explains it very well. I'll have to
Yes,
work
no,
on
it
that
does.
question for next week.
No, it does. I've often wondered about that. You know, like what is the difference? No, it does. Thank you. Um, we've been seeing a lot of Kanye West in the media lately. I don't know if you've been following his Twitter rants and all of that stuff. Are you familiar with what I'm speaking?
I have followed him up to a point. I haven't heard anything recently about him. I know, you know, for a little bit he was planning on running as president. Um, and then there were some other strange things. He had come out with some tweets
Yes.
that had video footage of him, you know, kind of confessing that he had almost harmed his daughter, some things like that. Um,
The media, the mainstream media is kind of putting it down to his bipolar situation type of thing. They're calling it his bipolar condition or something like that. But I'm pretty sure that he is in the system. Would you agree with that? Can you say anything about that?
um, you know, my firm belief is that he is in the system. You know, I believe that both him and Kim are high priest and high priestess for the Eastern Quadrant.
Yeah.
Um, or actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. I think it's the Western Quadrant that they're both over. So,
Because I have definitely seen him with his black eye, and you
mm,
know, there's a lot of stuff there. Now, for me, I'm wondering as well. I was going to ask you about, you know, after him going into the Kardashians, actually, because again, in my mind, how does someone who's in the system, especially when they're two such public figures, be married to someone who's not? It doesn't
right.
seem to me that that's even possible, especially not if you look at their scenario. Um, What are the Kardashians' involvement? Do you know? I mean, not just Kim, but that whole family.
Yeah, their family goes back quite a ways, and you know, one of the things that kind of has left the mainstream media focus on them was, I believe, wasn't her father involved in the? He was the major lawyer who was involved in getting O.J. Simpson out of
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
convictions and stuff with the murder of his wife. So you had something that was, you know, very covered up. There was a lot of ritualistic things that were kind of intertwined with that case. So when I had first heard about it, you know, I had really questioned if it was a ritual killing or if it just, you know, was a matter of he was angry and lost control and ended up hurting her. Um, but the whole thing was kind of sketchy. And then, you know, they're a family, they've got a mass amount of money. All of the girls are highly involved in different types of witchcraft, and they kind of flaunt it in the photography, the modeling that they do. Um, you know, where you get this feel almost like it's a, you know, sirens type deal where they're luring men and, um, you know, I kind of go back and forth. I mean, there's some things, I think Kim has made some real strives to um, focus on her family and stuff. But then there's always been that, behind the scenes, there's a lot of secrecy, and you kind of pick up on that with that family. Um, so, I personally, like, when I first saw even her, and I don't want to say that the act itself was a bad thing, but I had to really question when, they stepped alongside and were helping the president. I was just like, whoa, wait, what? Like, why is this high priestess
Yeah.
with the president? And, it didn't just get a reaction from me. There were some other people I know who were in the system, and they were just like, what? Like, what is going on? Because usually there's just such a polarity. And then it kind of, as stuff started coming out, and I think this was around the time Kinye first started really claiming that he came out and of the system and came to the Lord. Um, but, but I remember, watching a video of him sitting in Trump's office, and Kinye has a deep passion for criminals, those who have been, have served time, but the system has taken advantage of them and have kept them held captive in the system. Or, even some of these people, have had petty crimes and they're serving maximum time for them. And so he does have a real heart for justice. Um, but, I just had to, I heard him talking in that Oval Office, and I could tell that there was a brokenness, and then some of the things that he said were not really Christian views at all. They were reminiscent of what somebody who was in the system would say.
Mm.
um
Mm.
so when I heard that, I was like, I don't know if I can really say that he's come out. And then as time has progressed, there's a lot of things, and again, I mean, I'll put the challenge out there. I've respectfully asked Kinye that if he has come to the Lord Jesus Christ, to reach out and talk to me and share his testimony. I would be his biggest advocate standing beside him if that were the truth. But I'm seeing a lot, being a defector myself, when you're not doing what the system wants you to do, the first thing they do is they hit your money, your job. They take things away. They threaten your family, your kids, um, until you get back in line. And you don't really see that happening. What you see happening is that in this Christian role, he's really like making himself even more famous. And I listen to the music, and I fight with some of the other Christians on this who really support that he has come out. And I say, well, look at what he's really promoting. There's really a lot of self promotion in it. The focus, although it sounds good, I'd really challenge that the focus is not always Christ in those things, or encouraging people to have a relationship with Christ. In fact, a lot of his gatherings and Sunday services are very reminiscent of what I grew up as a child, when they would incorporate the high priests and priestesses doing, sex magic. They would all be dancing to the same rhythm. They'd be getting everybody into that same groove. And so you're seeing that mass amounts of people that he's getting to, join in
Yes.
as one mind, one spirit. And that's what they would do to open the spiritual gates. So, I really question the validity of that. And I could be wrong. I put it out there, Kinye, if you really have, then, you know,
Yeah.
talk to me about it. And, you know,
But
but
guys like that, or these kind of singers, like I'm just looking because, like yourself, there are certain kids born into the system and that are programmed, as we know. Now I'm wondering, like someone like Kanye and let's say the Kardashians, would this genre? I don't know how you would define it really, but I suppose celebrities, but that's more, I don't know if you can't even call it a socialite. What are the Kardashians? They're not actors or whatever. They're famous for being famous, I guess. But
yeah,
are
just
these
simply elite, they're,
yeah.
yeah.
So are they born into the system, or do they at a later stage, let's say if they want to get famous now, let's say they're vying for their Kardashian family show, and then sell their soul, so to speak? Or would it be something that is coming from a far way back that just progresses into what it is? And as you say, we were speaking about last week the mentors or
Mhm.
the godparents. Would they then just be mentored and by their godparents until given everything they need until they get to selling the sex tape where you now become world famous? Or is it something that just happens and in that moment they see this good looking girl, she's a good asset for them, bring her in, mind control her, do what we want?
Yeah, those are all the different situations that somebody could find themselves in. With that particular family, they're they're they stem back in the bloodlines quite a ways. So, in their situation, I would believe that, they were all raised into it from birth, and that they were raised for specific positions and trained from a young age to act and look and behave a certain way and to fulfill a certain role.
That's insane. Wow. One takes these things so at face value, isn't it? Here's this family and just with these pretty girls and they get wealthy by just being a normal family. That's how they sell this themselves, isn't it? Meanwhile, back
Yeah.
at the ranch, there's a whole different. And I saw there was something about Kendall as well, dressing up in this rabbit clothing. What is it? The Alice in Wonderland. She did a whole thing dressed up and down the rabbit hole. I mean, I can't remember now. This is just all in passing, but as I'm talking, it's just
Mhm.
like springing back. So it's very interesting. Wow. And
Yeah.
someone like Miley Cyrus, because who would think Billy Ray Cyrus with his achy breaky heart? I mean, that's the only song I remember about him about maybe 2 decades ago,
Mhm.
would be someone powerful, and that he has Miley, who is clearly mind controlled. Would she be from the Monarch program?
Yeah, she was, and there with them also there was a connection with the Disney Channel and the Disney programming. So what's interesting is if you read Michael Aquino's book Mind Wars, in there he has he talks about all the people who influenced his work, and in there he names Walt Disney. He was a very high level Mason. Um, I think information's going to start to come out that that was one of the major um, CIA or MK Ultra training programs for children. Um, there was a lot of training for people to become high level sex slaves through there. And that's why, a lot of these kids, even going all the way back to the Disney Club or the Mickey Mouse Club, um, you saw these kids where everything seemed wholesome and good, and they were promoting, family and healthy things. And then as soon as they were done with those clubs, there was a major change where, even individuals like Britney Spears, she just all of a sudden was coming out very provocative, sexualizing herself. She started doing stuff with Madonna. So you kind of saw the same thing with, Miley, people all the way through her high school years, everything she promoted on that show was wholesome and good. And then next thing you know, she's, naked on stage dancing, and people are like, what in the world is wrong with this child? You know?
Exactly. Wearing her pizza outfits. I
Yeah.
mean, that to me is I look at some of those pictures of her and I find it so disturbing, because it's clear that she's not in her full state of consciousness, so shall we say. I look at this, and even Britney Spears, I mean, who I think it's obvious she's been a product as well, um, of this, and you see her now. I've watched quite a few videos of her where she glitches out. She literally has this personality change on stage, and I think that's what I wanted to ask you about, is that you see quite a bit of that, and I think that's what I was asking about Kanye.
Mm.
Was that, is he just glitching out now with all this craziness going on, and these crazy tweets he's sending all over the show? Um, is this him glitching out, or is this him really being bipolar? And like, you look at the likes of Britney Spears, who also glitches out, and you can see there've been a few that they just sort of sit and for a few seconds just stare into nothingness, or a few minutes actually. It's crazy to watch. Is that them glitching out from the mind controlling?
Yeah, I think, you've really got to look at the defining of terms. Uh, the Illuminati is very intricately tied into the psychological system. And they would like us to believe that it's a mental health issue or condition. That puts everything into the crazy realm, and, therefore makes everything that these individuals say non-credible. Even takes it so that, what they're repeating is not memories, but instead just, their crazy mind that can't think logically or critically. So, we really got to look at that. If we know that there's connections with the Luciferian Illuminati, and we're taking, everything has to be investigated and validated, because there are individuals who do come forward and falsely accuse or make up things, or glamorize things to get attention. So you don't want, people to be falsely accused if this isn't the real case. But with that said, there are moments where the programs go wrong, and that's happened a lot, and it happens so often that the system really invested in psychiatric care for these people. You can go back into the 1940s through the 60s, and that was more when Tavistock was running the psychological program, um, that was for the system. And they were working in conjunction with the Catholic churches, with the states, to create psychiatric institutions and hospitals for these people to go into. And through that, it gave them one place to have all these individuals and to further the mind control. There is a point in the programming where, if it breaks down to a certain point, they consider that individual broken. There's nothing, they can't reprogram them. There's nothing they can do to fix the person. Sometimes the person is in what we call a vegetable mode, and that means that they really cannot produce a cognitive thought, or even, a sentence in its fullness. and there's things that the system does, you know, to cause this. When people's program is not working fully, sometimes they do use electrotherapy or other things, and there comes a point where the mind breaks down. It can't take any more of that. The other thing you're looking at is if you're dealing with altars, you know, if the people are disassociating, and part of the program is that they, you know, create these different altars, and it's kind of like you've got breaks in your personality, or it's almost like your mind breaks into separate individuals. All right. So with that, you know, when somebody has these different personalities that are all within them, but they're really not just personalities, they've broken themselves into several different people. And so when one is conscious to the forefront, the other parts don't know what that one is doing. So, you know, programmers can use that. They can use codes, they can use colors, it could be like somebody walking past in a red scarf. They've programmed these people with triggers so that when they see that trigger, different altars will arise or come out, and they can give those altars different jobs or roles. So when a person is in that state, they're simply doing what they've been programmed to do. If it's their cover job where they're an executive CEO, you know, when that altar's conscious, they're going to just perform that job and that task. Whatever it may entail. They may have family, that they also have as part of that cover role. So it gets really interesting. And, you know, so I question with some of the things with Kinye and others coming forward, usually with bipolar, you're more depressed. There's more of an inward focus. We could say his confession did have an inward focus, that he felt guilty, he felt remorse, but people in that state aren't always able to so cognitively talk through those things. And it was interesting, the other thing too is where he chose to bring that out. Usually these people have guards around them that really are monitoring everything they say and do. If I had been in that same situation and all of a sudden was trying to tell, usually those guards would have stepped in and escorted me to a back room, but you don't see that happen. So there's a lot of things that normally would happen in the system where I'm asking myself, well, why did that not happen? So then I'm posed with a third question. Is some of this just for show? Is it for show so that they can then say, he's got some mental issues, and it breaks down everything that he's proclaiming happened? Or are they doing it to discredit him, to make him look bad if he really has come to the Lord? There's a lot of questions with that.
Yeah. Sure. It's amazing, with all of this, especially now, who do we believe? Everything, it's like on a knife edge so often, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. Thank you for that. While we're on that topic, of sort of the more famous Hollywood bunch, you've recently shared in some of your other recordings on other programs as well about Gloria Vanderbilt.
Mm-hmm.
And she was it the Grand High Priestess of the Eastern Quadrant in
Mm-hmm.
America? Okay,
yes.
And she passed away. And then HRC, Hillary Clinton, was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to fill her role. But then for some or another unknown reason, maybe you can fill us in as to why Hillary didn't go for that role, which then left it, or that position rather, which left it open for the other priestesses of the Eastern Quadrant to compete for that role. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And out of those two was Meghan Markle and Beyonce.
Yep.
So they were competing for the role of Grand High Priestess.
Mm-hmm.
So who got that? As far as I'm aware, it was Beyonce, but is that true?
Yeah, I believe that's true. And there were some things that happened that we call declarations. So basically, from my understanding, the Grand High Priestess's battle at the Chateau Amours, which is the castle in Belgium that Laurie Cabot Kent's family used to own. And under there's a training or a battling arena where anybody who's a high priestess, grand high priestess, or priest, that's where they're going to have their battles for power and different things. And it might just, I mean, they can call for battles anytime. It doesn't have to be certain dates, times, or during ritual times, or just to take positions. But that's officially where they have those. So we did see that they had that they kind of, Beyonce and her husband were kind of out of the country, and then they flew in for um, what was it, the Disney Lion King premiere.
Yes.
And there were some things, Beyonce had put out some videos before that were indicating that she was declaring herself the Grand High Priestess. So, if you watch the Lion King official video that she does, there's a lot of symbols in there. The colors that she wears, the women who are in the videos, the people who are dancing like servants to her. She
Mm.
at one point even comes out, she looks like the mother goddess, Isis. So, there's things in that video that indicate that she's taken that position. And then at the premiere, Harry and Meghan actually were there, and there's a video out where they're making comments to one another, and Beyonce calls Meghan her little princess, and Meghan calls her my queen. So that's very significant. That was a passing um, of hierarchy, a what would you call it? An honoring or acknowledging the power structure among each other. When you look at Meghan, when she's saying that, it's not like two friends who are just calling each other names and being like, oh, I'm your princess and you're my queen.
Yeah.
Meghan seems really hesitant and kind of mad about that. And you can pick up her body language in that video. So that's what I know about the situation. And then I do know, if you look into it further, there's also, there's a church that was created that worships her as a goddess. So there's been some things the past, couple of years now that have come out where, she's got these followings, and they've created some very interesting things in regards to her command level, I guess I'll call it. But
So when they're competing for this position at this castle in Belgium, what do they do? How do they compete? I mean, are they fighting with each other with swords? Are they flying around?
It can be, yeah, actually it is pretty surreal when you see it. You know, the closest thing for people to understand would be very similar to what you see happening in the Harry Potter movies. Um, you know, they're allowed to fight with whatever they can conjure or bring onto the field. Most of them aren't going to use weapons like swords or anything like that. They're going to use energy or demonic spirits. When they're on
What
the
are they
field,
dressed like? Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying
yeah,
to paint a picture in my mind. So what are they dressed in? And
you know, it
who's
could
all
be
there?
anything. I mean, they could be dressed however they want to be dressed. There are some high priests and priestesses, especially if they're of the older, just what we call like the older generation, where um, it's more of they romanticize the occult and their traditions. Those people most of the time would be in black robes, or they're going to be kind of more in the Victorian, um, what I'd call Victorian goth vampire dress. Um, so it depends on the person and kind of what they're into. Um, just to be frank and honest, by the time the battle is done, they usually are not dressed. Um, you know, it gets pretty graphic and violent. Um, you know, so between the individuals who are fighting and their demons, um, you know, it gets pretty graphic. You know, I have seen them, you know, like this massive wind throws them back against a wall. You know, they'll be on top of each other, choking each other, slicing each other up. It's pretty graphic. And then they can cause, like, some of the spells and stuff, they can cause, you know, their opponent to be causing harm to themselves, and then that has to be countered. um so, you know, it can get pretty I'll just say pretty graphic. It's hard to describe everything that I've seen with that. It's not as intense as the protector battles when they battle each other, or when you have the protector group that we call the wolves. They're probably the most graphic if they're
Are these the
fighting.
assassins? The
Yeah,
wolves? Are these what?
yeah. So if they're fighting other individuals, um, I mean, it's pretty graphic, but they usually, you know, are not as intense fighting each other. But if it's somebody outside their clan, then it's pretty grotesque. Um, but I mean, if you watch the, you know, the basic witch movies that Hollywood has portrayed, that really does give a good picture of what these are like.
So they're always telling us what doing, aren't they? They're always
They
showing us what they
are,
do. We
yeah,
think it's so far-fetched, and meanwhile it's really exactly what's actually happening. How crazy is
yeah.
that?
And they clarify, you know, they now will advertise that it's new, you know, what is it, CGI and
Yeah.
effect, and so you think that it's made up, that it's not real, and it keeps people from really knowing that it's real. And especially, you know, Christians who are meant to be spiritual warriors, it gets you thinking that none of that can happen or is reality.
Sure. I'm interested how Meghan Markle fits into all of this here. Now, Meghan Markle, I'm not a great TV watcher by any means, but I know she was not even a hotshot TV star. I don't know. I don't want to be judgmental, but as far as I know, she wasn't that big. The next thing, she's marrying the prince, and next I hear she's fighting Beyonce for a powerful position as a witch. Where did she come from? How does she fit in? Do you know?
I don't know on that one, her whole family history. Um, you know, they seem to be a backline that was being raised up for specific reasons. They wouldn't have her, marry Harry unless there, was something there that they wanted in that dualship.
Sure.
From what I believe is that it was a power play. Um, it gave them the ability, or the royals the ability, to hold multiple seats on the Satanic Council. Harry's in line to take one of those seats, which would be for the Western Quadrant internationally. So if he was sitting on that seat and then Meghan had won the Eastern Quadrant seat, with her connections to the West, it would have given her both, power over the West Quadrant in the US as well as the East Quadrant in the US. And then she could also, because she's married to Harry, sit on an international seat. So it really could have given them, if you think of it, the seats as kind of power votes, it would have given them like, 2 or 3 power votes in the Satanic Council over these regions. So that's what I
Wow.
think was going on.
Yeah. Is it true that she faked her pregnancy? Do you know anything about that?
I don't know about that. I do know that is a common practice among the royals. I think that every royal child should have to get their DNA tested. Um, I think we would be quite surprised. Um, and that's not just the UK royals. I think every child in every country should be tested and
Absolutely.
see if their family really is their family, and if they're adopted, if those adoptions really are legal. um, so, but
Yeah.
there is a lot of question and debate about that. um, what typically happens, is that these royal women do not bear children, and they are adopted and they claim them as their own. um, and their job's just to train them and raise them up, get them ready to serve in the system. um,
Gosh.
yeah.
So you say Harry is definitely quite high up. I mean, I know we know that the royals are involved. I'm just interested in their individuality. So Harry has definitely been through the system, got his training,
Yeah.
programmed to take over Western Quadrant,
Yeah.
or groomed rather.
Right. And he's a high level Mason from what I understand. I believe that there's connections with, the Order of the Bath, the Order of the Garter. Um, you've got the Order of the Thistle. So some of the older Masonic orders that his father and his grandparents were in, I think he's now taken over some of those, or been led into some of those orders to be in their former positions in those orders.
Can you speak about William and Kate?
Um, I would say it's a very similar situation to Harry and Meghan. Um, I don't know too much more I can speak on that. There were some things that I brought forward to give people a visual of some of the training that I went through. There was a video a while back that went out of little George making Christmas pudding, and where they kept just adding ingredients until it was so hard that then they just encouraged him to stab it. That was training that I went through, only in my experience it was cookie dough. And I have shared this memory of, and I can't say the name of the individual, but there's a hidden son of the royals, and he was probably about 12 to 15 years older than me. and very gentle person. He just was always present. Um, but there was a group of us kids, and the queen was there, and we were all making chocolate chip cookie dough together. And she did kind of that same thing, just kept adding stuff till it was so hard, that you couldn't stir it, and then they would encourage you to stab it, and cookie dough would be flying all over. We'd all be, laughing. But then we kept like making more and more batches. So they kept making new batches. And at one point I'm the type of child where it's like, I'm getting tired of this. I don't want to wait for the cookies because I don't even like the cookies. I like the cookie dough. So when the queen had turned her head, I stuck my hand and grabbed a scoopful and put the cookie dough in my mouth, and this co-conspirator, we'll call him, he was trying not to giggle and laugh. And we now have gotten to reconnect, and we've talked about those memories and stuff. And when we do that, like, I don't always share the full details because I don't know if it's the real person or not, so we kind of will take turns filling in details about memories. And that way we both know that, that we were really there and really experienced the event. And so what was funny was, as we were talking through this memory, he goes, if I remember correctly, he's like, you actually stuck your hand in that bowl like 5 times, and she slapped you with that spoon 5 times. And I just started laughing. I was like, yep, you're the real deal, because I did. It was like every time she turned her head, I was going for that cookie dough. And so but they would do stuff like that. They would make it seem like it was family gatherings, family events. So you see that happening with the royals a lot, is that they create these scenarios or situations where it looks like it's the good, wholesome family doing a trip or going out and doing something together. And behind it is training. They're training the children to act a certain way, have a certain posture, fulfill a certain event or ritual, or prepare for a certain ritual.
Wow, yes, I think I've certainly seen how much of a facade that has been. But
Yeah.
now that brings me to my last question on the royals, that is, and Princess Diana.
Mm.
I mean, what a beautiful soul. How on earth did she get to marry? Now that we know how these royal weddings work and things, how on earth did she get to be marrying Prince Charles? And was she in the system?
From my understanding, she was in the system. I believe she was somebody who was programmed. So, again, from childhood, she was raised and bred and brought up to fulfill a certain role. And then, in her 30s, you start to see a change where, we call it that basically her programming was starting to break down. She was starting to have memories surface, and she was starting to wrestle with those things. And, she, several times in her life, you can see that she made the active choice to fight the system. And, I fully believe, from the things I've seen, that she was fighting to get Harry and William out, and to protect them. And, it ended up where, in order for her to continue to protect them, she had to walk away. You know, that protection kind of just meant that, they were still in the system, but, their lives, it was like an exchange of life. They got to live. The system didn't kill them. And, she got to live and see them. So, it seemed like there was a compromise there on her end. But then, I think that she got to the point where she really was trying to bring forth the truth of just how bad it was. And then that's when, they they did the car crash and went after her.
It
So
makes such perfect sense as you speak about it. I mean, when it's like so many of these other things that since I've been on this amazing journey with you, it's like, what do you like? Why didn't I see that yesterday? And especially with her, of course, she would have had to have been in the system. Of
yeah.
course, she would have had to have had the right, whatever it was. You can't even say energy or bloodline for Charles, but there was a reason why she was there. And as you say, as her memory started resurfacing, that's when the trauma would have, and throwing herself down the stairs with eating disorders and them again accusing her of that, probably making her a whole lot crazier, doing a whole lot of gaslighting there.
Yeah.
And then understanding why she walked away, as you say. And just before you said it, I had that sense that she had to walk away. It was a choice that she made. And then obviously got taken out at the end. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. That rings so true. It's the first time I've seen that complete picture. So thank you for that. I think there's one other lady I would like to ask you about today, and a lady called Siska Wheeler. You mentioned her briefly in our last connection we had. I've listened to some of her stuff as well, not as much as I would have liked to, because with all this we're doing now, I'm so busy and it's wonderful. But can you please just tell us a little bit about her, who she is, because I think she is really, if I can encourage any of the viewers to, if they want to look into the mind control stuff, this would be a lady to really follow and listen to what she has to say, because I think her story is quite phenomenal actually as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Cisco Wheeler, from like the information about her was made known through Fritz Springmeier. And he's an individual who, has spent his life trying to reveal the Illuminati, in the government system. And he's really worked to try to bring a lot of the information. He has a book he wrote called The 13 Bloodlines, where he tries to map out all the family names that go back generationally and make up those bloodlines. His work is very thorough. There are, I'll put out their disclaimer, there's a few points, I have gotten to communicate with Fritz several times. So there's a few points where Fritz and I, we disagree, but it's not enough for me to say his work is not valid. He's got his reasons why he believes certain things or chooses to still put that out there. But I use him as a valid source, especially the book 13 Bloodlines. So the story is that Siska Wheeler was one of the programmers, along with, she had 4 sisters, and they oversaw a lot of the Monarch programming that was going on in the 5 departments. And from what I understand, like, they would do the initial teaching to the people who are going to be running the programs. So she worked, like, after, well, let me think how to put this. From what I understand, when Fritz Springmeier found her and her sisters, he had to work to try to get them out of the system, and he could only save one of them. There was just so much demonic bondage, so much warfare over trying to get these women out. So the one that he got and basically helped walk through deliverance, and helped, hide and took all her information, was Cisco. so with that said, him and Cisco, they wrote a book called The Total Mind Control Program. And it's probably the most extensive work out there detailing kind of the basics behind the Monarch program, how it works, how the program breaks down into smaller programs, who uses those programs. She has in there like the different types of drugs that they use during these programs on people. So it's really well worth the read, and it takes a lot of time. Like if you're, it could take a month or so to work yourself through this entire book. There's just so much information in it. But according to my experience, everything in that book is valid. The only thing I would kind of give a disclaimer on that I disagree with, and it's only because I disagree because it was not my experience and I had no knowledge of it. She does talk about several of the survivors, indicating that Billy Graham was involved in high masonry and that he abused girls and stuff. So that was not my knowledge nor experience. So, but Cisco Wheeler, along with, I do know several of the survivors who have made that claim. So she, acknowledges that in her book. But other than that, it's probably one of, I'd encourage everybody to read it. I do have, some memories with her, with Lori Cabot Kent, and I know that, she would be taking pictures sometimes of us as kids, doing certain rituals or things like that, or ritual prep. So those are kind of the few memories that I've had with her.
Wasn't her dad the 2IC of Joseph? Is it Mengele?
That's what I've heard. I have not been able to confirm that.
So from what I've watched of hers, apparently I think her dad was just under Mengele and she was controlled by Mengele and had some terrible things happen there.
Yeah, that's her and her sisters do talk about that they were part of, that Mengele had been in control of them and done their programming and trained them to do the program, the programming that she writes out. It sounds like that was dictated from Mengele and she had to memorize all that.
How do you, now we also touched on this previously about people wanting to get out of the system. Mm-hmm. How does someone who's been so deeply programmed, like her, for example, and I'm interested to know, because you were talking about a lot of demonic kind of restrictions and things there, mm-hmm. How does someone unprogram someone who's that deeply programmed as Cisco?
It really is, in some cases it's easy, but it's hard. The majority of the deprogramming is spiritual warfare. So, how I explain it is that when somebody's programmed, it's like if you think of the person as a filing cabinet, let's just say a file cabinet with 3 drawers. Each of those drawers is going to be filled with files, which are memories, or, and those memories are, incidences or events that happen to that individual. So how the occult builds the program is that every time you're in an event, they link it to a spirit, and then they stick that, memory somewhere, we'll just say in the file cabinet. They put the memory in the file cabinet. And so you'll have all these files that are linked to demonic spirits. And then there will be a a higher level demonic spirit that is guarding the drawer. And so, if you've got 3 of these, I mean, think how many files you could have in that drawer, how many demonic spirits that person could be dealing with. And then you've got to get past the 3 doorkeepers, per se. Scripture is very clear that, to deal with demonic spirits, it's a matter of simply rebuking them in Jesus' name and casting them out. And there's, I'm not somebody who believes that you have to say specific words for that, other than, the Lord rebukes you, I cast you out. Scripture tells us that some of these higher level demons, like when you say those things, they won't leave. And they've got some sort of grounds or rights to stay. But Scripture tells us that if we fast and pray, that's how we overcome those stronger demons. And some of them take more time to get rid of. So this is really the battle you enter into when you're working with these people to help deliver them out, is that you have to step into that place of really being the spiritual fighter with this person. A lot of them have been under this demonic control for so long that they may not even recognize that there's a demon there. The demons I've seen, they actively will try to kill these people or get these people to kill themselves. They will fight for the soul as well as for the body of the person that's trying to defect. There's a
because they bought it, right? They bought
right,
that
they
person.
own.
Yeah,
Yep,
they own
they own
that
it.
body and that person. Mm-hmm.
Yep. There's a great book called He Came to Set the Captives Free by Rebecca Brown, MD. And in there, like, she goes into a lot of details. Like, the person that the Lord had her help get out was a bride of Satan. And she, details what that daily battle was like for this bride of Satan. And, basically, I mean, it cost her her job. She lost her job keeping this woman at her house and walking her through deliverance. In fact, not only her job, her career, Satan then, made it so that she could not get another job, that was high level in the medical field because of this. So, Fritz has, shared that same thing, with Cisco, that it really was an intense fight and battle to see that deliverance through for her. And then, once the battle was all done and the demons were gone, then the healing started. And, the Lord walked with Cisco through that and helped to integrate her different personalities and things. So really it's the Lord's work. And I've known a couple of the therapists, Christian ones, who, work on the integration, and that involves a lot of, forgiveness. A lot of times what I've heard is that if you just give that, that part of that person a voice and let them speak out the traumas that they experienced, that then they're able to come to a place of peace, and they're able to, that helps with the overall integration, where they're laying those memories to rest and are at peace about them.
What happens to the actual demons, though, the ones that are keeping guard of the various? Now, sorry, before you answer that, I want to ask you something, because I know her story as well. Initially, what I read in the beginning of her life, that her dad was her primary caregiver and her mom was hardly even relevant in her life, which I would imagine would have been part of the training anyway. So she was completely dependent on him to bath her, feed her, dress her, care for her, love her, whatever. And then the way that they actually split the child's personality, because I would imagine maybe here, like, the splitting of the personality would be when the demons come in, right? Would that be right?
Yep.
Okay.
When they create the trauma.
Okay, so her first trauma was created when she was 18 months old, and after building all that trust, he then raped her.
Hmm.
So that was the first way that he split that personality. So is that, as I was just asking, when the demons come in and they then maybe take on another personality, or have these multiple personalities, is that relevant? Is that how they do it? By creating trauma?
Yeah,
So
they purposely cause the trauma in order to connect the child to the demonic spirit.
Sure. So that is such a lot of reverse work. I mean, I would imagine whichever counselor or healer or doctor or therapist, whatever is dealing with her, would literally have to go back each and every step and then buy her back, because she was sold to the devil for a price, and the devil wants his stuff. I mean, hey, if
Right.
I bought my house, I want my house. You ain't going to take my house away from me. So then they've
Yeah.
got almost like got to renegotiate the soul.
Um, in a way, but it's really, it's not that difficult. Like, I think of the scripture passage about the man who had the legion of demons. Um, you know, that meant that there were so many that it was, it's just ridiculous how many he had. And, it said he would be among the graveyard, and he had super strength and everybody was afraid of this man. But when Jesus went up to him, Jesus, just simply rebuked the legion, and they all had to obey his voice. And it then says that the man was sitting there and in his right mind. So his mind was, the moment the Lord did the full work, that man was completely restored and in his right mind. And so, that's the same way it is with survivors, is that, when the healing is done, and the Lord alone is the one who knows the length, the extent of that. Um, Sometimes there's complications, and more often than not, those complications are that, the heart draws people back to the evil, and so they will dabble or try to get away with certain things, and that then gives those demonic spirits access again. So that's kind of the game that the spirits play, is they will try everything to get back. So it really takes, you know it takes multiple, or let me think how to put this. We're made to be within a community, and so it really takes that community, teamwork, to have that full deliverance. If you're, I'm not saying people who try it by themselves won't get deliverance, but it's harder to accomplish that end goal if you don't have the support and other people in that fight with you.
Oh boy, yeah, I would imagine you need every bit of every ally that
Yeah.
you can get. Yeah, I would imagine. But it's good to know. I mean, I think that is because if someone like what she's been through, what Siska Wheeler's been through in her life, can get out, then I think that gives us a lot of light for,
Yeah.
or a lot of hope for everyone else, or who wants to get out anyway.
Well, I can share
Um,
let me share a really good story quick that kind of
yeah.
goes off that. But I have an individual who he's still not, we'll just say he never was in the system in the first place, but he was trained outside of the system as what they call a wild card. So it meant that somebody who was in the system found this guy, found that he um, had major spiritual warrior skills, and they equipped him and trained him, gave him the leads that he needed to advance very high level in black magic. So this individual is actually one of 5 people I know who's gone all the way to the top in black magic. And the demon that he decided to summon and connect with was Moloch. who's my arch nemesis, and he's one of the, the most difficult, nastiest, horrific spirits that there is. He's, bloodlusty is the term that people use for Moloch. What's interesting is that this individual really has a heart for people, especially children. And so he refuses to take life. So, at the core, I'm like, well, how does this work between you and Moloch? I don't see this being a prosperous love relationship, it's like, how do you get past those demands? Because I mean, I've seen Moloch when he throws his temper tantrums and, gets very aggressive and, will tear people to shreds because they're not fulfilling his demands. So I'm like, how does this exactly work? So anyway, though, what he shared was that he basically, gives his own blood, and it's caused him to be in the state now where he has seizures and epilepsy because of this. But what was interesting was, the Lord put this person on my heart that as I was talking to him more and more, I just, would be on my knees praying for him. And I'm somebody that when I'm on my knees, more often than not, I'm going to have visions and be seeing the people. And, I see them in the spirit world, and I reach out and I touch them in the spirit world. And so one day, I was simply doing that. I'm just praying for him, and I saw him in his room. And, in my vision, I reached out and just put my hand on his shoulder and was like, God loves you and is with you, and he's given you everything that you need to get rid of Moloch, and next thing I know, my phone in, the physical world starts ringing, and I pick up the phone, and it's this individual, and he's like, get the hell out of my room and stop praying over me and get your hands off me. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, well, what do I do with that? Well, then the next time I'm praying, and all of a sudden I have this, it wasn't a horrific vision, but it was just like such a detailed vision where all of a sudden, I'm praying, and all of a sudden Moloch is standing there, and I'm just like, oh, shoot. And I start putting on my armor, and I'm like, rebuking him. And all of a sudden I saw Michael and Gabriel come down, and they each had their swords, and their swords were crossed like this, and they pinned Moloch to a wall and were holding him by his neck with those swords crossed. And as they were holding him and he was fighting, all of a sudden I saw the Lord take this massive peg, and he pegged the back of Moloch's neck, like the scruff of his neck, to this wall. Okay. And then I watched as, each arm was pegged and each leg was pegged. Now, what's even more interesting is that the pegs have names. Okay. Like I've seen these pegs in other visions. But the first peg that was, at the scruff of his neck, it was called "Be Anxious for Nothing." Okay. And so I see all this happening, and all of a sudden my phone starts ringing, and it's this Satanist, and he is screaming, and he's like, you evil, dirty, nasty black witch. He's like, you better let my demon go right now. And I'm like, so you're seeing Moloch, where's Moloch? He's like, you pegged him to a wall. You better undo this nasty spell right now. And so he was confirming like everything I just saw. And I was like, I swear I did not peg Moloch to the wall. I didn't even ask for that, but hey, I'm glad he's there. So it's funny, this is now about like 2 or almost 3 years ago now, and Moloch is still pegged to that wall. Like this person confirms, and so it got to be pretty nasty fight. But I share that story because it shows the power of God, that even, I wasn't even specifically praying for God to move in that way. I was simply just praying for God to deliver this person out of the power of, from the power of Molech, and to make a way for him to have that freedom from that spirit. And out of that, God did something in the supernatural that, was just utterly amazing. And, that's the freedom that's offered to everybody. Anybody who's in this, they know that, there's 7 top general demons, and Molech is one of them. And so if God can do that to Molech, there's nothing that can hinder, none of these spirits can hinder these people from coming out. God has the ability to deliver them out of this darkness and fully out of the control of any demonic spirit.
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. I think that story is hilarious, I have to say. So is your friend now Mulak? Is he Mulak free?
Well, he has to work with Molech when he decides to in this condition. It gets quite interesting. We then saw like some of the commander demons stepping forward, going between him and Molech. But basically, what he relayed is that, I've known this since I was a kid because I had some encounters with Molech. So I've known that this demon, the moment he is able to, he plans to kill me, and he's made that quite clear. So there were some nasty messages I got that pretty much were, the moment he's released from that wall, he's coming for me. And I'm like, okay, well, all right, we'll have fun. The first time he did it was when we were kids, and he went after my training partner and was trying to get my training partner as a host. And he literally was coming up through the summoning circle. And I got mad when I saw him because I knew who he was. And I was like, oh, heck no, like, no, he's not going into my training partner. And I simply asked the Lord to close the gate, and Molech got stuck in the floor. And this is part of, I have asked for the pictures to be released. I don't know if you can see the spirit in the pictures, but this was part of the governmental experiments. So there were generals, like military generals, there were high-level scientists and people who all witnessed this, over 100 people. And Molech got stuck in that floor and was throwing a temper tantrum. And there were other kids that were present, and then me and my partner were in the middle of this circle, stuck with Molech. I was behind Molech, and Molech was facing my training partner. And we both just started laughing because he was throwing this massive temper tantrum. And, he did not get my training partner, which, praise the Lord. But from that moment on, he had a thing against me, and, has made it his life's endeavor to take me out. So
I'd say he was a little bit frustrated.
yes. So
I love that. That's very cool. Wow. Okay, that is amazing. I have lots more, but I think I'll keep them for our next recording. But I do maybe just, if you can, there've been 1 or 2 people that have asked me just to put a question or 2 forward to you. And if you can answer them as well as what you can, or as much info as what you can put out. Have you met the Antichrist in flesh?
I have answered that question. That started on Good Dog's show. It really was not supposed to be public knowledge, but yes, I have. Good Dog went ahead and asked the question on there, and I'm not somebody to lie about it. So yes, I have, but it's not something I can talk about or reveal. Individuals who need to know who that person is are aware of that. So I think that's all that people need to know. And then I just encourage people who want to know more to really read what scripture has to say about the Antichrist. And, nobody's going to miss his rising or his coming forth. It's going to be a public deal. And there's specific things that we're told about that, such as, that he will stand in the temple in Israel and declare himself God. um, there's a lot of connections with Israel. So there's things that, if you read the scripture verses on that, you can know what to expect and be looking for that.
Great, thank you. Are you afraid for your family with all this going on rather?
Afraid, no. I've lived over 38 years now with the Lord alone being our protector. So, I'm not afraid of anything, but is there a reality that we're constantly in danger, constantly facing threats? Yes, we constantly have stuff coming our way, that makes it a very dangerous life. So,
Yeah, I'm sure. Gosh. Well, we're very happy that clearly you are very well protected by God, and your family, and that is just amazing. And I really think when you step into your truth and you live your truth in the way that you do, you will naturally be protected by that. So,
right.
okay, what is your innermost wish for the people who have committed these atrocities in the
Yeah.
system?
Um, I'll share something I've never shared before with this. I've shared how as a kid, the Lord had asked me, or basically told me I could ask of him anything that I desired. And my one wish and request was that they would come out of this darkness. And since I was young, I was always crying out to the Lord for their mercy. And it's hard to explain to people because I got to see the full picture. I was right in the middle of this spiritual war with these individuals. Really a war for their souls, a war for their morals, their ethics. I watched as they battled demons, that would force them and meld their will until they committed these most horrific acts. So I was privy to watching those deep struggles that these individuals had. I also was there for many of them when those struggles stopped, when they fully embraced that evil. Um, and there's nothing worse in the world. I mean, it makes me want to cry, that moment where somebody gives up fighting and just embraces something that they hate so much. And so for me, the Lord, kind of as he's transitioned me through this time, there was a battle that I was in the heavenlies, for these individuals. And literally, the Lord showed me this little candle in my hand. And he told me that that candle was my cry for mercy. And that since I was a child, that little candle had always been lit, and it was ever before his face. He saw it every day, and he heard my cry for these people. And then the Lord said to me, he said, stick the candle into the altar of coals. And what that meant was that in the Lord's throne room, there's an altar of burning coals. And the book of Isaiah talks about this. Isaiah the prophet saw that altar, and they're purifying coals. But when they purify, there's this idea that they utterly destroy at the same time. Um, and so I've always been terrified of these coals because, it's like I don't want to see that utter destruction or end. for these people. You know, I want to believe that even up until the very end, at some point, that they will turn away and come to the Lord, even at the last moment. But the Lord told me to put that candle in the burning coals. And I fought with God. I couldn't. I was like, Lord, I cannot do it. And this is the funny part. You know, I've shared how me and my training partner have shared visions and dreams. So he also was seeing the same thing. And so I'm sitting there fighting with God, you know, totally in prayer focus. And I'm like, Lord, I just can't. I won't give up on crying out for their mercy until my very last breath. I'm going to cry out for their mercy. And all of a sudden, my training partner grabs that candle out of my hand and shoves it down in the coals. And I was like, I was like, great. And he was like, just leave it. He's like, it's time for God's judgment. And I was like, okay,
Oh, shit.
it's gone. So at that point, the Lord, you know, clearly stated that it is time for these people's judgment. And, you know, part of my calling is not only to cry out for their mercy, but to declare the judgment of God against them for their evil deeds.
Yeah.
And that's a very difficult place to be in. And it has been a hard transition for me.
I can well imagine. Wow. I can well imagine, especially after you've experienced what you have.
Yeah.
I really, your friend you were talking about earlier on, the one who who's got Mulak pinned up against his wall,
Yeah.
pin up. His
Gotta
special
pin
pin up.
Oh, sorry. That was bad.
I'm sorry, it's like the Mulak pin up. He's a pin up calendar now. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine his ego? I'm sorry, that's funny. But I love the fact that, for example, you know, when you talk, although he's done his thing in black arts and dark arts and what have you, he's not taken blood, or has not has chosen. I suppose, had you stayed in the system, you know, you would have been also one of those that have chosen not to take blood.
Right.
So I'd be, you know, as you say, that's an interesting combination, that very bloodlusty demon. And I'm sure, if I'm just thinking, yeah, Satan would probably have been sending it to him in order to turn him, make him, you know what I'm saying? Wouldn't that be part of what Moloch's purpose would be, is to try and turn him into a bloodlusty thing?
Right. That's exactly right.
So that's why he's a pin-up.
Right.
No, because he couldn't get it right.
Yeah.
He's been punished.
It takes a very strong person to deny, you know, Molech. And you know, it's pretty graphic. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but bloodlusty doesn't do, you know, justice to describe what Molech is or does or requires. You know, it's
Yeah.
graphic doesn't even describe. I don't even know a word. I mean, if somebody can come up with a word that
Yeah.
fit that better, I would like to know that word. But
Wow.
yeah, you know, so he's not on Satan's good list right now, but
And let's go there again.
He hasn't been intervening, because I think a lot of them are scared that they'll end up on the wall too. So
Exactly.
they're all like, hands off, Molech, you're on your own on this one.
I'm coming in on your action, buddy. So
Right.
you got all the other demons trying to steal Moloch's action.
No, they're all like, nope, we're done. We don't want to do
Yeah.
it.
That's wonderful. Jessie.
Somebody, you know, who's dealing with these lower level demons some hope and laughter to, you know, just ask God to pin him to the wall with Molech. They can, you know.
I can picture this face. It's hilarious. Oh, wonderful. Okay, well, Jessie, I think I'm going to say thank you. Gosh, we've been going for a while again.
Yeah.
It's been another wonderful well, evening for me with you. I think with our next recording, there's definitely more stuff I'd like to just bring up so we can get more into that on our next recording. I think for me, the word I'd like to use just to sum up this evening's connection is unification, to unite, to become united during these times, because I think there's so much going on in the world right now between everyone. I mean, if we just think about how many people are fighting about Trump, even us here in South Africa, I mean, it's ridiculous. You know, if you like Trump, you are a persona non grata kind of thing. You know, it's very much carried on like that as well. And just with this masks and social distancing, and I have not seen so much nastiness on the internet, I don't think, in my life before, as what we are currently being towards each other. I mean, the comments I've seen people give to each other, you know, and comments that have been thrown at me from the least expected sources, you know, I mean, that's no problem. I'm just saying, I'm just noticing. So in this time of strife and separation and the spiritual war going on, what would you say is a good way for us to unite, to create a united force? Doesn't matter what your color, what your creed, what your denomination. When you've got love in your heart, we want to move forward together. So how do we get to that point? I guess after that is what I'm trying to say.
I think it takes a lot of, drawing near to the Lord. And I, people have to look up. I don't remember the Psalm, but I know that it's out of the Psalms. There's this picture of brotherhood, and I think the Psalm is even called the brotherhood of the unity of brotherhood, something like that. But it pictures the priests who used to stand in the temple together, and they would come in to serve the Lord, and each of them would be from a different family unit, um, and they were required to serve their time every so often. But when they would come, they would have oil poured over their heads, and the oil would run down and down their face, down their beards, and would drip onto their robes that they were serving the Lord with. And they would pour this oil over each other's heads. And that psalm, it talks about how beautiful is the oil, that the unity between brotherhood is like that oil that dripped down on the beard, and it was a sweet aroma. It would stain the robes. So it was a constant sign and symbol that oil, that unity was there. And, I think we have to get to the point where we're willing to fight for each other. We're willing to fight for those relationships. That we're willing to go to all extents to fight for one another. It's so easy to judge somebody and to judge what you see happening in their life, even with these people who've done horrendous things. It's so easy to be like, they're evil, they're wicked, I'm completely walking away, I want nothing to do with them. And we really have to ask, what does the Lord really desire of us? Yes, there needs to be boundaries, there needs to be judgment, there needs to be consequences. But at the same time, the Lord desires forgiveness, he desires reconciliation, which people, don't really think about that term of reconciliation with unity, that we've all done things that are wrong. And scripture says, the Lord remembers our sins no more. And that's the point he wants us to come to with our brethren. Not that we
Mm-hmm.
forget so they can continue in their evil. That's
Yes.
not the point of this. But it's when they've really repented and turned away that we don't even look at them in that light of that sin anymore. We see instead, like the priest who had the oil poured over their head, we see them as somebody who's set apart, somebody who is made like us to serve God. There's this race in life, and we're each meant to run this race, not just to get past the finish line for ourselves, but we're meant to pass that finish line with eternal glory. There's fruit that we all have to bear, something in society that we have to give to each other, and we're meant to give that fruit in abundance to one another. And our life goal, that unity in its fullness, is that we're getting across that finish line with all our brothers and sisters, and we've all got the full amount of fruit that we could bear for one another to enjoy. And there's that feeling of delighting in one another.
Yes.
That true fellowship and delight and enjoying one another. And that's the Lord's picture for each of us.
And on that delightful, delicious, beautiful, positive note, that is lovely. That was really lovely. Won't you please close in prayer for us this evening again?
Lord, we just come before you. I thank you for these times. I thank you for all that you are doing, Lord, not just in South Africa, not just in America, Lord, but all around the world. You are restoring the fellowship that we are to have with each other, that we are all your children together, Lord. And Lord, I just ask for that. I ask for the things that we've talked about today, that we may know the fullness of unity with each other, that we may be able to walk with each other, and that we may fully give of ourselves to one another, Lord, not withholding anything from anybody, but that we would have what the other person needs and be able to come alongside of them and build them up and bear up underneath them, to walk with them in their suffering and their trials, and to just be life to one another. So I ask for that, Lord. I ask that you would give that to us adults, that we may display that to our children, that our children may truly know what it is to fellowship with one another. So Lord, we just thank you. And Lord, today on my heart, I just ask for the rescue of all these children, Lord, that you would not leave a single one down in the tunnels or in the darkness somewhere. You know them all by name, and we ask that you would miraculously allow each one to be found and brought out of that darkness, Lord. And we ask that you would no longer allow these demons or these spirits to have control of their souls, their bodies, or their minds. We ask that when you bring them out, that you would do a miracle and that you would restore them, not just take away symptoms and leave them in their brokenness, Lord, but we ask for complete healing. We ask that they may come out with songs of joy and that they would be led forth with peace. And we ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen.
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 Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Jessie, thank you. That was amazing. I look forward to our follow-up connection again.
Sounds good. All right, we'll see you guys later.
Indeed. Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye-bye. Wow. Another incredible afternoon with this lady. I don't know, every time I have this conversation or these conversations with her, it's just something more inspiring, and just what an amazing woman. to share her story and create so much awareness. So yeah, thank you, Monet. That was great, and we look forward to seeing you guys again. Yeah. Give us a like, a subscribe, and a share if you wouldn't mind. Oh, and we have a Facebook page nowadays, and I think we have a Twitter account too, don't we?
Yes, it will be live tomorrow.
Okay, so we've got a Facebook page,
Well,
Aquarius
it's going to be
Rising
live
Africa.
by this time.
Okay.
When they're going to see the video, it's going to be live.
Okay, by then it's live. So we now have a Facebook page and a Twitter account and a YouTube channel, Aquarius Rising Africa. So please join us, share it, and just enjoy this journey with us. We're just taking it moment by moment, day to day, and just allowing whatever has to unfold to unfold. So I thank you so much for each and every one of you who joined and subscribes and supports this channel. Have a beautiful evening. Take good care.
Bye.
See you later, Monet.
See you on the other side.
Ciao. Hello again, everybody. Welcome back. We've got yet another amazing recording with lovely Jessie. I have to say, yes, I have to say, you are the well that doesn't run dry. So there's just such a wonderful well of information that never stops flowing forth from you. And it's an absolute pleasure to always have you here and always be inspired and inspiring. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Lovely.
having me.
Always the greatest pleasure. Okay, I think tonight what I'd like to maybe focus on to begin with is the secret language of the elite. So we often see these movie stars or the royalty, politicians, with black eyes. There's one black eye, which I think is communicating something from what I've read as well. And I think we have spoken about it as well. But then you see them making all sorts of symbols, and I understand that is how they're communicating in sign language with each other. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so, well, the hand signs is just one of the ways that they communicate. There's a lot of verbal, or let's put it this way, nonverbal language that they use using their body. So a lot of these individuals, you know, I talk about posture. And so, you know, when you grow up in that world, you're so, you get used to what does posture look like, you know, that becomes the normal base for everything. And then when you start to see people stepping outside of that posture, like, you know, it could be just a simple arm movement. It could be, you know, they, you know, wink at you or something. All of that then, you know, is communicating something. So you learn to start picking up that body language. One of the ways that they, you know, we've talked about how they do things in plain sight for, you know, they do it right in front of the public's eyes. People, you know, don't know that they are communicating. So they use a lot of means. It could be media. One of the biggest ways they communicate is through magazine covers that end up in our grocery store lines. Those come out at certain times. Usually they're quarterly. And so usually on those covers, you'll see, you know, stars doing strange hand signs. And what those things are communicating is really, you know, where the rituals are going to be, which quadrant they're going to be in, and who is required to attend. And, you know, even it will go as far sometimes as to communicate the places where those rituals are going to be. So all these people, you know, as they're living their cover lives, all they have to do is just walk through the grocery store line, and they know exactly who, what, where, you know, they've got to be and when. So I've been trying to, along with Kathy Fox, I'll give a plug out for Kathy. If you go to @Kathy with a C, @Kathy Fox, she has a blog about the Illuminati hand signs, and I would encourage everybody to read that, be familiar with it, and start watching. You'll pick up, just even walking down the street, you'll see those things being communicated, but it will help you to start, as you notice those communications, it allows you to start understanding how these people are operating within your community, your state, your area, your country.
That's amazing. It's like I've seen, especially when they're doing, I don't know, the round with, I don't quite know if I should be even doing it on here.
Like that.
Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, let's be brave. We're going to be brave on this, okay? Today we're going to be sending out messages to the Illuminati.
I love that.
Can we create our own here? Because often I see it's like this or upside down. What do you know about that? I mean, do you know anything particularly?
Yeah. So we're holding a special meeting tonight. People are going to be there. So they're very, they mean a lot. So basically, you're going to view it like, how you're going to interpret it is how you're seeing it. So, if you see this symbol as it is, you see everything's on the right side. And so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to notice the side, and think of, like, you're just looking at my picture, think of quadrants. So, my hand would be where the east quadrant or the north quadrant are. Okay. You notice my fingers are kind of bent there. So what that's showing you is that the rituals are going to be happening in the fingers are pointing in the direction. Okay. So people in the East are informed that everything's going to be happening in the West quadrant, with this symbol. Now, if it was straight up like this, I can't do it on the video because it's backwards here, but if the fingers are pointed straight, that means that it's going to be in the North quadrant. And if they've got both, then that means that it includes the West and the Northern quadrant are required to attend that ritual. If you see the hands open, I think I gotta go the other way. No, still wrong. Okay, there we go. It's hard because I'm on it, like the camera makes it all backwards. So if you see this is going to be the southern quadrant. So anytime the hands are down, it's the southern quadrant. If you see I can't even do it with the camera, but you see both. No, I got to do it backwards. I can't even do it. I got to think here. All right, so we got that. Okay, now I'm going to turn this one. No, that's still wrong. Wait,
I love
All
it.
right. Now you get the gist. If one's up and one's down.
You got a whole lot of witches confused there, girl.
Everybody in the South, okay? So if you see it with both hands, that means that you're both in the North and the South quadrant. So that's kind of how you'd interpret. If it's the other hand going this way, it's, that rituals are going to be in the East, East, this would be still North. This is going to be East and North. And then this is just going to be in the East. And depending on the Hollywood star, like if you see somebody who's like a royal or somebody who's international, not somebody who's particularly from the US, that means that the ritual is going to be in the East quadrant in the world. So not just in the US, it's going to be international. So those are some of their symbols. like those are the basic ones, and you can just figure out, okay, everybody's going to be gathering in that, let's just say, Western quadrant. So then what we watch for is they'll continue to have different magazines put out different things. So some of them then will talk about, oh, let's look at so-and-so's mansion in California. Okay, well, we just saw somebody put up, hey, other way, rituals are going to be in the West. So now someone else is putting out the where, the location. They're talking about so-and-so's mansion in California. So now we know that the big ritual, like they could have smaller groups who, could be meeting anywhere in the world during this ritual time. But what those things are telling you is that the hierarchy for those quadrants, which are going to include the high priest and priestesses, the grand high priest and priestesses, the sisters of light, the major individuals who run the different departments, those hierarchy are going to be gathering at the ritual in California. And it very most likely is going to be somewhere underground or near the mansion of that person that they've mentioned. Or they may even bring out things about, did you see so-and-so's new yacht? And their yacht, like they've been, they're going on vacation. They're going to give it a maiden voyage to the Caribbean. Well, now we know the ritual's in the Caribbean, and it's going to most likely, all the rituals are going to be happening on these super yachts. So those are how we start to detect, what's going on. And as people understand that, you can be watching for your areas. If you're in those California areas, you can start, watching to see, okay, around this time, are there people gathering? We've pinpointed a lot of the different strongholds with the dumb bases. So, there's individuals who, are watching those for activity. They're watching to see if there's, a mass amount of, semis or other, if ships are coming in with a lot of things, containers that they're leaving on the docks during those times. So we start watching those things. One of the things a while back that was caught back in, I think it was 2016 or 17, they had the Bilderberg conference in Italy. However, the ambassador for the Italian Bilderbergs was not in Italy during that conference. So it was really strange. Like, he's the ambassador. Why is he not there while they're having a meeting? Okay. Well, instead, he was here in the United States. And so, the country started watching, and you can look up and find there was a ship that they called the Aquarius that had 350 individuals on it. The majority of them were children, and they tried to dock in off of the Malta area there, and the president refused to allow them to dock, and they brought in Coast Guard and other individuals who were able to rescue those children. But basically those children were heading towards the Bilderberg conference. So there was a case of human trafficking there. So this is why it's important to know, when you watch these things and you understand what's happening behind it, we have the power to pray, so when we know that there's going to be rituals in the West Quadrant, we start praying over those states. We start praying that the Lord will stop the traffic movement of kids going into those states. We can have people watching, for weird events that may arise. Like sometimes they'll decide to have music festivals or different types of fairs or festivals where they're gonna, where you'd think you would see a lot of kids coming in. So you'll watch as those things pop up, and that's part of a way they're hiding, bringing in mass amounts of children into the area during those times.
I mean, this is why it's actually important to learn what they're saying,
Yeah.
not just for we can joke now, especially like this, because I do this when I do face yoga. So now I was just wondering, like, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah, well, they go
But
back to ancient signs and symbols. So, you know, really it gets into the palm, or, you know, like the hand magic signs,
yeah,
you know, of the different, the Jesuit, the Masonic lines. Even
yeah,
further, it gets back into the Hivite worship, which included the goddess worship. So all those signs and symbols are not just things they've made up for our present day. Those were ancient ways that were used to summon different demonic spirits, different, you know, with it comes magic, basically.
yeah. It's good to know what it means, really. It really is.
Yeah.
Wow. So
I
there
was
we
gonna
have
tease,
some.
you know, when you do yoga, you're gonna have to be like this, you know, like the sun rising.
I'm not supposed to get rid of my wrinkles. I mean, this is how I get rid of
The
my
dark is going
wrinkles.
to light.
And I do this like as well. So like, what, you know? Exactly. Speaking of which, Mornay, do you have a picture there? Speaking about that V symbol. We've been exploring a lot of the Nelson Mandela
Yeah, the
and
Nelson Mandela one.
yeah, what's happening with our African guys, and we've come across some pictures and garb they're wearing. As far as they all pretty much linked to the Knights of Malta,
Yeah.
that lineage.
This one.
So they've come up. Ah, there he is. Now this is a very disturbing picture for me, Jessie. Sorry,
Right.
because it appears in two articles that I've read. And one of them says this is the symbol for cannibalism, and the other one says it's the symbol for Kabbalah magic.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, so it's really hard to tell, and sometimes they'll communicate different things, but when we're looking at these hand signs or symbols that are like this, what's important for people to watch are the thumbs. So I know we've talked about, you know, and everybody's just going to have to understand today's, you know, a teaching day. So you're all going to get to be acquainted with the satanic hand signs here.
love it.
But we've talked about, you know, the devil horn. And so, you know, most of the time, like the stars would do this. And I tell people, watch the thumb, because the thumb is really what's communicating the message. So this symbol here, or if the thumb is just coming straight across like this in the front, that simply is a sign for Lucifer, for, you know, it's the devil horns, okay? But what you need to be aware of is when that thumb slips behind, it now becomes the Pan symbol for the god Pan, which is known for luring children, you know, through his music into the dark night, into the forest, and they never return. It's become one of the biggest pedo symbols. People will have images of this hand like this with the thumb behind, and that indicates, you know, that there is, you know, sex with children. Now, the other way it can be is where the thumb, you know, instead of over and across, but it becomes straight up. And usually when you see that, it indicates that they're sending a curse. Usually they'll turn, I gotta do it like this, they'll turn the hand like this so that it's facing whoever, and that means that they're sending a curse. So the same thing with these symbols, you know, we see Mandela, you know, normally how the symbol would be displayed, you know, you would have that thumb that would be out like this, and, you know, you'd see somebody having their hand across their chest, the fingers spread apart. That's going to be a sign that, you know, if they're walking past and they're just like this, you know, or, put it on their face or something, it means, hey, I'm in the Kabbalah. I'm high level Kabbalah, actually, and usually into the dark Kabbalah. Or you'd see like on a magazine cover, they may put their hand over somebody's shoulder. I can't do it to myself, but they'd have their hand coming over and you'd see that split, and it could be both hands like over somebody's shoulders like this. And that's showing, hey, we're part of the Cabal, into Kabbalah, black magic and stuff. When you see again, you watch the thumbs. So when the thumbs are, just kind of out or on the side, that's going to be Kabbalah. When you see the thumbs split or behind, that's going to usually indicate the cannibalism. So what's weird about his picture is it's a mix of both. So it's really hard to interpret that picture. Is he saying he's part of the Cabal black magic, or is he indeed saying he's part of the cannibalism? Because you see his hands, like I think they're like turned sideways, and you can't make out, is that thumb directly on the side? Is it directly,
Yeah.
So but what's concerning to me is that he's doing that sign near his face, near his mouth in particular. So if I were looking at that, I would be concerned that he is indeed sending, a message that there's going to be a cannibal event. I'd like to know when this picture was taken and what it was put on. Was he advertising a fundraiser? If it came with an event, I would very clearly communicate that to mean that he was letting other people know that event was going to be a cannibal event.
By the looks of the picture, he was already out of prison. He looked like that. I'm going to say that was probably taken within the first 5 years after he was released from prison. It's hard to say. They don't give you. I was looking for the source of the picture.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't in either one of the articles, but I think if you're high level Kabbalah, you're probably involved in cannibalism, right? So one would be going hand in hand with the other.
Yeah, there is at those higher levels, you're doing invocations and spells that, have to be done with blood. So, usually those events do come with that, but we can't say for sure on that, but we can pose the questions and create the awareness that people can start watching for those type of hand symbols and things, and question, what are they communicating? Who are they communicating to? Are there other things with that picture that would, answer those questions? Who, what, where, when? If you can answer those questions, then most likely there is an event that they're communicating is going on. And, you can create awareness about that or be in prayer about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because this is really one of the occasions for me that the minute our eyes start opening, it's amazing what we see.
Right.
So especially with this process, the more my eyes have opened to what's been going on, more and more information is flowing in my direction and in our direction for us to see these things. I also read an article, or was doing some research rather, about him. And before he was actually married to Winnie Mandela, he was married to another woman, which I actually forgot about, but that's not a secret.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he was incredibly abusive towards her, physically nearly murdered her. So that's a part of him we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've also been getting feedback on from a few people, in fact, since we've been doing this, is that they've heard he was into little boys. This is apparently not the first time rumblings around this have happened, about his, I don't even want to say the word around his name, but his pedo desires, pedo antics.
Yeah.
So there's definitely been people that have heard what's going on, or this has kind of come up before. Interesting. Mona, do you have any of those other pictures that we can just,
Yeah.
I want just Jessie to have a look. There's the one where he's giving a handshake, I think, with Oliver Tambo. Okay, there, that's Desmond Tutu.
So
there's, okay.
So if you go back, even that first one with the robes, but which one were, go ahead and you showed the pictures. Yeah. So that one, usually when they do that, I can't do it to myself, but they'll do that handshake and you'll see their thumbs, they'll cross over one another and then cross back. So, you know, and it's really fast. They'll be like, you know, that, and they know, like they'll do different things with their hands. Even as their hand slides in, they'll be moving their fingers in a certain way so that that person knows that they're a fellow Masonic. So those type of things are really important to watch. With, you know, you definitely see those thumbs on the pressing on the front forehand.
Yes.
And that usually is very indicative of Masonic. Now, if you go back to that one with the robe, even that one right there. So what's very common is that certain posture that the other gentleman is standing in with the hand crossed over. That is when you are in the presence of somebody who is of a higher position than you. You will do that hand sign, and that means it shows, like, you know, for everybody else who is involved, they know then who's the honored person. Okay, so they would know Mandela is higher than this other guy because he's doing, they call that kind of like it's a sign of submission. He's showing that Mandela is of higher position than he is. So they would indicate that, so everybody who would be there would know, you know, even though they might be under this guy, he might be their leader, they would know that Mandela is the one who's going to have the final say, the final authority, and be heading up whatever's going on. So it was a way to indicate honor or position.
Wow. I don't even know who that guy is, actually.
Yeah, you see, there's other people, like you'll see that young girl who's involved with the climate change, Greta. She does that sometimes in front of people. Some people have misinterpreted and said that usually is a way they indicate who their handler is. That's not necessarily always the case. It could be. Because the handler obviously is going to be in a higher position than the person who's subservient. But it really is just, you know, showing that, hey, this person's higher. I'm subservient to this person who's next to me. You know, so show the proper respect to the person that's next to me. So.
Wow. Mona, are there any other pics? I want the ones there was with Tutu. Okay, that's I don't even know that. I recognize his face, but I don't know who he is. There you can see him. It's quite small in the top middle. There he is with Oliver Tambo.
Yep.
Oliver Tambo.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Oliver Tambo is the father of the ANC. He's no longer with us. He's passed away. But there is Nelson Mandela with Oliver Tambo.
Mm-hmm. And you see that weird handshake. you know. And also if you kind of catch his fingers there, you know, it could
I'm
just
looking
be,
at that, yes.
it could just be a relaxed look, but it kind of looks like that, you know, devil horns. You see the middle two fingers kind of unnaturally higher up than the others. Usually if your hand is just down, you're not going to have those two fingers sticking out more prominently. All your fingers are going to kind of be in the same position, would just be the
I agree.
natural, you know, but you see something there besides his handshake,
Wow.
with this extremely odd handshake.
Yes, it looks ridiculous. I don't know what's going on there. Morne, the next one, thanks. Just slide it along, because there we have
with
no,
sorrows.
hang on,
Yeah.
the one, hang on, the one above that was next to Mandela and Tambo first, please. This one, yeah, just enlarge it again.
Okay.
Top right corner. And yeah, you have Cyril Ramaphosa, who's, I mean, but look how he's looking. Look how he's looking down. And that's Harry Oppenheimer, who was said to be his handler.
Right.
So,
And you see that crossing of the hands. Notice that it's slight, even though it's slight, you still see that crossing of the hands, indicating he's in the presence of somebody who's over him.
Wow.
And then sometimes when you see remind me, who's the other gentleman who's with him?
The Harry Oppenheimer is the older white guy.
Okay.
And then that's Cyril Ramaphosa, who's our current president, but obviously much younger.
Yeah, so if you see Oppenheimer's hand there, what kind of throws it off a little bit is the thumb, but the thumb can still be thrown in there, but you see prominently the two fingers. When you see one finger, it means to proceed. Two fingers means to hold back or to stop, whatever, you know, if they were having a discussion or, you know, about a certain subject, and he showed those two fingers, it would mean do not proceed. You know, stop whatever you're doing. If he would have had one finger out, that would be permission to go ahead to proceed.
Wow. Okay, and Mona, just the ones below that, please. Okay, there we've had that. There is Cyril Ramaphosa with Nikki Oppenheimer. That is Harry Oppenheimer's son. So clearly the links are still strong. You can see this is a few years later. I'm not sure if there's anything untoward there we can see.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything distinctly sticking out in that picture.
Okay. And then here we have again, there's Thabo Mbeki, our president before Jacob Zuma. And I still don't know who this white-haired guy is here. But that's just them in their Masonic ball gowns. So those call it a logo type thing. Is that anything specific on their garments they're wearing?
I believe that is Knights of Malta.
Yeah, they are all from the Knights of Malta.
Yeah. So that would just be that's one of their traditional robe garbs. And they have it both inward and outward. Usually just over the one shoulder. The symbol is over the one shoulder.
Okay. Yeah, we have it. She's living proof. Is there anything else, sorry, Mona, that's coming after that?
That was that one photo.
Yeah, let's.
Soros, George Soros.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
Bill Gates and those.
Yeah.
Is that a Masonic handshake?
Yeah, definitely that is. and then for picture taking as well. And in that picture, what's interesting is you can tell by body posture as well. So Tutu would be of higher position than Bill Gates. And you'll see the people who are of higher position will usually position themselves slightly behind the person. And usually like their hand would be on their back. And so that's a sign of power, another one. So he's kind of put Bill forward, and he's coming behind him. So what's interesting too about that is a lot of times the people who are investing in those under them, who are either financially backing or somehow doing something to progress that person's position or career, kind of like a sponsor or something like that, they would position themselves that way to indicate that they're supporting and investing in this individual. So I find that kind of interesting to see Tutu in that position with Bill.
That's Ramaphosa, by the way. That's not Tutu. That's Ramaphosa.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Yeah. So this was taken, I think, in February, just before our COVID pandemic, and Bill Gates was here I know he was here in February, and I think this was taken in February this year.
Give me 1 second here. Having a technical issue. Okay.
No problem.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, and then in the second picture, you see a gentleman on the far right, and he's in that submissive hand position again. Mm-hmm. And you see kind of neutral for the middle guy, and then you see Soros is kind of in that position where he's slightly behind him a little bit on the one side there. So that's going to be signifying power structure in that picture. So that's about all there is in that one, that they're taking a picture and they're signifying who's in what position and place.
Yeah. Interesting, because it seems to me the first one that we had there with Ramaphosa and Bill Gates, Ramaphosa was behind Gates, right?
Right.
So slightly behind. So he was basically backing Gates's vaccines and nonsense, and backing the COVID pandemic that they obviously came here to do their final checkup on, to see that the plan was going ahead. Gosh, that's frustrating.
It could signify too the foundations that financially backing the foundations, or kind of being the money avenue for those things. So not just the public support of it, but you got to think all the ways it can be supported.
Yeah, exactly. Oof, ouch. Not nice. Got to think about how many dodgy deals went down during that time and are still going down. Wow. Well, that was super interesting. Thank you so much. I enjoyed that particular one there. So I have a few names I would just like to throw out to you tonight again. And I also just want to maybe tell the viewers why I do this is because I'm not seeking really sensationalism or that Hollywood star, whatever. It's really about creating awareness. So the names that are coming up are pretty much the people are involved. And for many people, it's still shocking that certain individuals are involved in these nefarious activities. That's become my new favorite thing to say, nefarious activities. It sounds so nice. Anyway, so the first one I want to ask you about is good old Dr. Phil. What do we know about Dr. Phil?
And yesterday, you know, I'll just put out there, we had a misunderstanding, and I could not make out the name you were saying, and I was like, let's not talk about him because I don't know who we're talking about. But yeah, so what people need to understand is really, you know, behind this mass mind control movement that the Illuminati has been putting in place. You know, we saw that they kind of set up this structure of, you know, who you go to that you can trust and who is giving you the right information. What different individuals have been trying to bring forward is that these people are really, you know, they're taking theories, they're taking unproven facts, but they're presenting it in what we call a narrative, and they're pushing that narrative, which, you know, propagates their agenda, and they're saying this is the truth and you can believe us because we're the sources. So they set up, you know, all these different sources, which included the media. It included high, you know, level educational systems like Harvard, Stanford, Princeton. It included, you know, major medical centers like Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins University. So you have, you know, doctors, lawyers, world leaders, Nobel Peace Prize winners, things like that. And these people became the sources with the true information. Okay. So those were the major players. So their next round to get people to fall into believing this narrative that they were pushing, they created these individuals that became household names. And how they did that was by creating these TV shows, you know, which, so things like Oprah, Dr. Phil, Ellen DeGeneres, okay? And then you had the nighttime crew too. So, you know, it didn't matter if you were a wife at home during the day with your kids, you know, you would tune into Oprah, you would turn into The View to hear, you know, what are the current situations and, you know, what is the truth I can believe about whatever topic is being presented. And so this was one of the ways that they got the masses to believe the narrative. So, you know, Dr. Phil, he even had shows, you know, one of the shows I saw where he was presenting, you know, he'd kind of present some of the way out there topics. So he had put up a video film that, you know, just had excerpts of this woman named Jessie. It wasn't me, it was a different Jessie, but she was talking about adrenochrome. And so he just started posing the questions, you know, is there something out there called adrenochrome? Are there people who are using this adrenochrome like a drug? Okay. And then he had lots of other questions. And then, you know, they kind of just dropped it. And so what you see happening with these individuals is that they would put the topics out there, but then the topic would just kind of fall away. Nobody would be really concerned, or, you know, like they'd kind of create like just, it's out there, but it's not something we need to be concerned about. You know, they're not pursuing that. So it really desensitized individuals in the public to these topics, because they're like, oh, well, if Dr. Phil's not worried about it, if Oprah's not worried about it, it's nothing to be worried about. You know, we don't need to look into it farther. We don't need to know. It's just some theory out there. This woman's probably just made this up, you know. So it'd really be used to, it's a softer way of discrediting these topics or what these people are saying. So with him even, you know, Chantel, you brought this out in our conversation earlier. offline here, but we were talking about how even Dr. Phil had where he had the black eye. You know, we know that that is used in ritual ceremonies. That is when, you know, it can be a sign that they've gotten adrenochrome. But it goes along with a specific Masonic ritual where they have to place their left eye on the book and take an oath. And that oath that they take at that moment, literally they say, you know, if I reveal any of the secrets of my brothers, it comes at the cost of my left eye. Okay. And there is something supernatural that happens there, or sometimes they're given a shot in that eye to turn it black, and they're required to have that black eye for the week until it dissipates and goes away. Well, it's not just a sign of memory for them that they took that oath. It's a sign to every single other Mason out there who's taken that oath that they're bound to keep their brother's secrets. And if they don't, it comes at the cost of their left eye. So when you see the stars or the Pope or other individuals displaying publicly that black eye, they're really doing it to remind every single person who's taken that oath, you know, that you need to remember to keep secrets. There's a cost if you don't.
Wow.
Wow. I've also read up some stuff on him, and particularly one of his sons seems to be very involved with a. I know he's a musician, and I've seen a lot of, is it Alice in Wonderland, White Ear Rabbit stuff, or is it Mickey Ears? One of the two. I think it must be the White Rabbit stuff. So that to me is really a great indicator that they are somehow in programming. Would that not be an indicator that that when they start just wearing certain of those things, parading around in it, they're making a statement of sorts?
Yeah, usually we do see that a lot with the different musicians. You know, and I think we talked about the sacrifice of children among the Illuminati, that they will, it's not like a ritual sacrifice unto death, but it's considered a sacrifice of service. So they literally will give one or more of their children to the Illuminati, and that person is set apart for service to the Illuminati. That usually happens at a very young age, usually around anywhere from age 2 to 5. And, you know, from that point on, that child is really not considered their child. And you'll see, you know, you'll see sometimes things will come out about those people not having the best relationship with that child, or the child will be put into boarding schools, so they're not getting that family connection. And that's because they're being put through training programs and being raised for whatever position they're set aside for in the Illuminati.
So he'd still be living at home with his parents.
He could.
And acting, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like they move from the family and suddenly go and live somewhere else. They can still be living at home with their parents, but pretty much on someone else's instruction.
Right. Yep. Someone else oversees their life. And
he's got quite an interesting house. I mean, I've seen pictures not too long ago of his house, which has these crazy stairways. And
you brought that up. I've never seen pictures of his house until now, and I have to admit that was quite wild.
Mona, do you have a picture there?
Yes, I have. Here we
That's
go.
a very unique.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. The banister. I was meaning to say the banister.
It literally is snakes.
Yes.
Look at it crawling down. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like in the back, he's displaying like that's
Guns.
It looks like a gun case.
Yeah.
And then that seat underneath the gun case looks like a rabbit. That's kind of interesting.
This one. Yeah. It's
Yeah, and
there.
he's got teddy bears, Mickey Mouses. Um, yeah, so it's very interesting. Yeah, and those, I mean, those little seats under there look like little rabbits. That's weird. And then you see like there, that picture on the wall looks like a teddy bear with his organs being displayed. I mean, I can't see up close.
Yeah, it looks like something like that.
It looks very,
Wow.
but it's got that childish feel. Like it's got a feeling like it's a child did the picture. Like it doesn't look like adult artwork. That's kind of
Mm.
weird. And then that almost looks like claws for or black ice cubes for his chandelier there.
Yeah. It's
So
very,
very
very.
Interesting.
interesting taste. I mean, what does one make of that? You know, it's like,
Yeah, that's very interesting to say the least. I
yeah.
did find that interesting, I have to say, because, and yeah. Okay, well, that makes sense to me. I think I've ticked a box there.
We figured out Dr. Phil. There's something off.
Fishy.
Hey, Dr. Phil.
Exactly.
Let's
Fishy.
not take that as our normal for, you know, the doctor's best, because I don't know. I think I'll challenge his taste in house attire.
Exactly. That's like a little bit gaudy. Anyway, but that's my opinion. Great. So another one I find very interesting would be Sir Richard Branson. Now, I've been listening a lot to Gene Decode, and he had quite a lot to say about Richard Branson.
Hmm.
And according to him, Epstein is small fry compared to Richard Branson and his shenanigans. Do
Yeah.
you have any info on that? Do you know anything about him?
I do know that Branson is higher up in the chain than Epstein is. I believe, and I'll just put it out there as I believe that as things come out about Glenn Maxwell and Epstein and their business, that people are really going to see Branson's name coming out a lot with that. I think that he was the higher up who was kind of running their trafficking corporation. Particularly, you know, what I'm waiting to kind of come forward is more information about the Terra Mar things. With Terra Mar, you had, you know, Ghislaine had addressed the UN, and, you know, basically was getting the UN to invest in this Terra Mar project, which the cover of that, you know, they were making it, well, you know, we're all citizens, we can all own a piece of the ocean, and it's our job to take care of the ocean. So they were kind of making it sound like a humanitarian effort. But as we start to look into Ghislaine Maxwell, you know, we see that she's got the submarine license. I believe Branson also has a submarine license. When we look further into it, you know, these people are connected to major companies. One of those companies is owned by Arab individuals, and they own these chains of hotels, as well as super yachts and super yacht submarines. So they actually have yachts that are submersible.
Wow.
The main area where these yachts and submarines are being operated out of is kind of in that New Zealand, Australia, South Africa area. And, you know, I'm just going to put it this way. What I believe in, Gene Decode has some more information. You know, I listened to his decodes on Australia. But what I believe is that in those areas, especially under New Zealand, you know, there's stories about there being an underground dumb base on the ocean floor. So you've got a complete marine dumb base. And from what I've heard, that dumb base extends all the way under that whole island of New Zealand. So, you know, you've got to ask, why do these people have the submarine license? What are they really doing with it? Besides the submarine license, the yachts and, you know, the other stuff they've also got now where they're advertising floating mansions. So you've got these things that they're creating that are really concerning because nobody has jurisdiction over the water.
Exactly.
You've got some nautical laws, okay? But so here's where it gets interesting. If you hear that UN speech that Ghislaine gave, she talks to them that if they join the Terramar project, they get a special, I'm blanking on what it's called, passport, okay? We know that when you leave one country to another, you have to have a passport, right? So these passports that people were getting from Terramar project basically make them citizens of no country. They become citizens of the water. So therefore, they legally cannot be convicted of any crimes committed on the water because they fall under no country's jurisdiction. So there's some very nefarious things. Now, what we're finding, you know, Jeff and I on Right On Radio brought out the story of Jonah Reef. He's one of the highest level trafficked children in the world right now. And when Jonah was taken from the United States, literally they deleted his birth certificate. And John Kerry signed documents that he signed Jonah's passport, and Jonah was declared as not being a citizen of any country. So what I really believe has been happening is that all of these high-level children that are being kidnapped and trafficked at the higher levels, you know, meaning that they're not being trafficked to be ritually killed, that they're making these children citizens of the ocean through the Terramar project, which gave them access with their passports to any country. And it also gave them access to any yachts, any submarines. You know, they immediately became their own non-defined vessel, and anybody could take them anywhere. So if you had somebody from another country come, they could pick them up off the water, off one of these super yachts, fly them to Australia or New Zealand, use this child however they desired to, and bring them back. And there's no having to document the child coming into the country or leaving the country. They don't have to document the child's missing from any country or not attending schools. So this is one of the major ways that I believe that, you know, they're getting by with this trafficking.
Yeah.
So I fully believe that Branson is one of the major forerunners in that. And if you think how big, you know, Epstein with his one little island was, just imagine somebody who's doing this internationally off the water with no tracking. Yeah.
Okay.
Is it possible that Epstein could have been the fall guy? And I'm not saying he didn't need to fall, but is it possible that Epstein was used as the fall guy for all of the higher level guys like Branson and co?
Yeah, I believe that is the case. And I think Blaine got, well, she got caught and stuff, but I think that was made possible as well, because they plan to have them take the fall since they're lower level individuals in the organization. And it's really going to be scary. I'm going to forewarn people that as information about Ghislaine and Epstein come out and the fullness of what they were really doing in those doing to children comes out, think of it as the iceberg. That's just the surface information of what was happening at a middle level to these children. At a higher level, the higher level people are doing far worse than what these people are being convicted of. So we have to keep that in mind.
Yeah,
Sure.
Absolutely. Speaking of someone dodgy, Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah, there's been a lot about her that people can, see. One of the things that came forward, that I was picking up on was, kind of what was happening to her during this lockdown and quarantine. And, during the first 4 weeks of that, you saw a huge change in Ellen's physical appearance. She was putting out some really weird videos, things that you're just like, the rest of us are coping pretty well right now.
Yeah.
It looked like she really was not coping too well. And at one point even she's like upside down on her couch and her position is very much like the tarot card of the Fool. I had to ask, is she sending secret communications? Like, what in the world is she doing? Because most people, even if you're that bored, you're not going to sit there to take the time of yourself sitting in that position, I mean, to make that
calling Justin Bieber.
I was like, what the heck? And then you had all the keys on the, and keys are very symbolic in the Masonic and Cabal world. They represent secrets that, you take an oath at a certain level where you actually get a chain and you wear the key on the chain. And it's to remind you that silence is golden and that you keep the secrets. So it's interesting to see with all this mass amount of really old keys. And that's usually what they'll pick for those necklaces are older keys. So, and then I'm kind of just my own personal opinion, but I kind of get scared some of the stuff she puts out with her mother. I'm like, what in the world is going on with her mother? I would be scared to leave an elderly person in her care,
Exactly.
and I guess that's just from what I'm seeing, that she's putting out publicly. So, those were kind of some of my thoughts on that.
Interesting that I must say I've never been an Ellen fan, her shows. So I've really watched, if I've watched 8 of her shows throughout my knowledge of her, that would be a lot. But one of them I did watch was where she spoke about herself and her wife, Portia. And in fact, Portia had just come back from I think it was Rwanda. I do speak under correction, but it could be Rwanda or the Congo, one of the upper African countries, where she's apparently started a sanctuary for gorillas. Now, she was apparently quite inspired by Diana Fossey, who I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with, but she used to be she worked with the gorillas a number of years ago. In fact, they made the movie on her, Gorillas in the Mist, was about Diane Fossey's life, where she was killed and she was putting an end to the poaching and, you know, that kind of stuff. But I find it interesting that since so many of these people will find a good cause, I mean, let's just look at our dearly beloved saint, that we've just seen him do all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I'm wondering about this gorilla sanctuary. I mean, this is just, again, it's a thought that occurs to me in the moment, nothing that I've kind of connected the dots with before, but just in this moment, in these discussions, it's popping up for me.
Yeah, you know, it kind of brings some things to question because, you know, as we were watching the lockdown, Ellen was one of the individuals who was really putting out a lot of videos of herself during that time. And like I said, we saw this physical breakdown, you know, where it wasn't quite natural. You're like, nobody else is really having those problems where they look unhealthy. And I had to, you know, ask, is she going through withdrawal of some sort? You know, a lot of these stars, we kind of saw the same thing. And for me, it brought up a lot of memories of the adrenochrome withdrawal. And so that question was in the back of my mind, you know, is she going off of the adrenochrome and really having, you know, a rough go of that because they don't have that available to them. And, you know, we're not making accusations. I'm just, you know, speaking from, you know, my experience, you know, what I've seen from other people. And so, you know, some of the things that I saw were very similar, very reminiscent. So it leaves the question in my mind. The same thing with, you know, what we see happening with her wife and stuff and the sanctuary. One of the things that these individuals do is they declare humanitarian efforts, and that's where their money is invested or goes to. You know, and so it seemed like Rwanda was one of the areas that they were putting their money into. So it very well could be a declaration of their humanitarian efforts. That particular story, I don't know how else to put it other than it really triggers a lot of bad memories for me. You know, and so I guess we're just going to kind of put it out there. And again, you know, we're not making any accusations at all in this. But one of the, you know, things that came out this past week from the task force was they posted articles sharing about the animal trafficking that was going on. And this goes beyond poaching or beyond selling exotic animals for, whether it's for body parts, organs, for spells or other things. When we're talking about the animal trafficking, there are individuals in countries who are into bestiality, you know, where they're sodomizing animals. Orangutans, chimpanzees, these are among some of the higher animals that are sold for this bestiality. What really triggered me in the gorilla sanctuaries is, you know, as a child, I had to witness some of the animal bestiality. But with the bigger creatures, it's not the gorilla that's going to be victimized. What I saw happen was that they threw out small children to the gorilla, and so the child really was the victim and was sodomized by the animal, and usually the children did not live through that. So I don't know what to do with these things, but it's to put it out there to people that this is a reality, that these people are investing money in these type of things that are going on, and they're making a profit or providing a way for people to continue in nefarious deeds or acts. Does not even cover the horrific reality of this, that they are allowing animals to basically sodomize innocent children, and in the process the children are killed in horrific ways, and people pay money to watch videos of this. These are things that are recorded, just like pornography. They're put out there on the dark web, and people are paying money to see this. There's just no words really for it.
I have no words. I understand. I've understood that animals certainly form part of this whole Luciferian satanic culture, because I've heard horrible stuff, and that has been on my mind to speak to you about it, but as a complete animal lover, for me, kids and animals are the most sacred. And to see what people do to animals just in normal slaughterhouses is horrific enough. But I can understand when you've got such a cruel mind that has no boundaries and no compassion.
Mm-hmm.
This to me is quite beyond anything. I mean, to hear what you're saying now is very mortifying. And, to think about the possibility that she or they could be involved. And again, please, guys, we're not saying they are. This is really something that has come up now in discussion. So as Jessie says, why are we bringing it up is we want to create, what we really are just saying is to be aware. And there are so many dudes of these celebrities out there who are supposedly doing good with animals and children. And I think it's becoming more and more obvious every day when we see what's going on and we see what they're involved in, that this is not a good thing. Really, it's not a good thing. And I question Ellen DeGeneres, knowing what we know about her, and I'm sure it's only, again, a tip on the iceberg. Why does she have a gorilla sanctuary in Africa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to pose the question, why?
And why is Africa so important to these people? We've got Ellen here, we've got Oprah here, we've got the Rothschilds here, we've got all these guys coming in as Mandela's patrons. No, ridiculous.
China.
Right? Yeah. I mean, China's in here. No, definitely. They've been in here for a long time. Anyway, okay, I'm going to ask you one more, because again, we're getting really on with time here. But just one more person I had in mind for tonight was Meryl Streep. What do we know about that lady?
Well, Meryl Streep is one of the, she is known kind of, we had mentioned like Gloria Vanderbilt was more of a face front person. And then we had Laurie Cabot Kent, who, is very famous in the witchcraft world. So kind of the same thing with Meryl Streep. She is, a very famous high priestess. She does tend to work in a triad, which means that she has other high-level witches that she works in operation with. You know, I don't know what else to say or that I can say right now, but, you know, it is, as we're unfolding things, you know, the concern grows more and more as to why are all these high-level high priests and priestesses, you know, investing so much in Africa. You know, what are they getting from that? And, you know, if they're investing so much, the bigger question is, why are we not seeing such great advances already happening in Africa? Why is Africa still portrayed as having so much need? You know, why is the need not changing or being met if they're investing so much into the country?
Exactly. Because what we do know is that, you know, especially with our mining industry, which is obviously one of our greatest resources, is that they come, they will mine our diamonds and gold and whatever else is that they mine, but they take the resources out and they don't reinvest it.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a big thing here with what a lot of these people do. So it literally is raping us.
Mm-hmm.
And why aren't you putting back? What is it about us you want? Why aren't you prepared to put back? Okay, other than our corrupt leadership, which has been going on forever, but now we know they're actually handled by our uncles and cousins and aunts and family in the Netherlands, in the UK, and Germany and America, for sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really, we understand we are controlled. We understand the system is rigged. That for me is interesting because there's just too many fingers in the pie here from these seemingly do-gooders who actually do nothing to do good. You never hear about them doing anything. And even if they do, it's one big hoo-ha. Harry and William here with their Rhino Foundation, trophy hunting our wild animals like they own them.
Right.
So there's a lot of that going on. And I actually did say the last one was the last one, but I do have one more last one, and that will really be the last one. And I know we often speak about him, but maybe to tell us a bit about Barack. I mean, there's so many crazy stories about him and Michelle being a man who's Michael, whatever, proper name Michael. He's high up in the satanic cult, Obama. He's apparently from the Ishmael bloodline. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah. Well, I think all that stuff we've kind of talked about is that, you know, he has, you know, first people have to understand that the story he's been telling us about his birth, his childhood, is not accurate. You know, there's a lot of speculations on that, but for me, you know, I found, you know, I went straight to a source, and people can look up Field McConnell. He is a retired Marine, federal whistleblower. This man blew the whistle on 911 or 9/11. And Field claims that, you know, he went to high school with Barry before he was known as, you know, Obama or Hussein. So he's got the evidence and the proof to show that, and talks quite a bit about, you know, about those things. Field also, his family was in the system. So, you know, it sounds to me like, you know, this individual, that Obama was somebody who grew up in the system. I know him to be connected to, you know, especially the Chicago area. You know, so he was connected with Hillary Clinton there. And then, you know, the things, I don't know too much about Michelle, so you know, I'm really not going to comment too much on that right now, but the evidence is there if people look for it, and they can research it and decide for themselves whether they want to, believe she's really a woman, or if they want to, accept what the evidence shows forth.
Mm.
One of the other connections that not a lot of people are aware of is, people have heard about Bohemian Grove. And so this past year, when Bohemian Grove decided to close down their website, Somerset Bellenhoff put a very interesting message up on the Bohemian Grove website, and it basically directed people to contact on Node 9 the Cathedral of Luxembourg if they had questions or needed directions. Okay, so what people need to know is that Cathedral of Luxembourg is another name for Notre Dame in France. This was after it supposedly had the fire, which, there's pictures of, Michelle Obama drinking wine on a boat as they're watching Notre Dame burn. So the question has to be, is after they've had this massive fire, and even if Notre Dame had been a huge ritual site they were using, and now it's, because of the fire, it's inaccessible, why is the head of the person who runs Bohemian Grove directing people to contact and call this church for directions? Directions for what? For ritual?
Yeah.
Why is the Cathedral of Luxembourg even giving out communications to people who want to be in contact with Somerset Bellenhoff or people who are involved with Bohemian Grove?
Exactly.
So there's a lot of questions here I've got. One of the other interesting things is the line Node 9. That's the back channel communications for the elite. People can look this up. In Arizona, the Vatican, and this is where it really has to go to, is the Vatican. The Vatican has what would you call it? They've got something that's used in communication lines that is called the Lucifer. Okay, and so when Bellenhoff talks about this Node 9, she's really telling them to go through the Vatican's dark shadow communication channels. So it kind of ties all those things together. And, it seems that Michelle Obama is very integrated with that line and with things revolving around that. So it's not just, Obama himself who's implicated in some of these things. Michelle as well has a lot of connections that we have to ask questions about.
Mm.
Oh, and aren't we just? I think it's nice. We ask the questions, the answers are bound to arise, aren't they? Even if it comes at another time. Wow. Wow. Okay. I think we've taken up enough of your time for one beautiful day. Night for us again. So, Jessie, thank you so much for your time, your energy, wow, you're so generous in terms of your knowledge you share. So much.
Yeah,
it's really, and I want to say that,
there. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's cool. It's pretty much what I wanted to say anyway, was that I think it's so amazing, and the more I'm doing it, the more people are contacting, asking questions, looking for information, and I'm loving it, because that's really what this has been about. It's just a gentle process, it's not like no. I mean, it's staggering information, but I like the way that it's unfolding. I must say it's really cool. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And Yeah.
Thank you.
Monet, would you like to, before Jessie closes off in prayer with us, would you like to?
Yeah, just wow. Again, wow. And thank you for sharing. Definitely. Thank you. I've definitely got some digesting to do so tonight. Yeah,
Quite
but
something, yeah.
yeah, be strong. Everybody be strong while digesting the information. That's how we're gonna eliminate the darkness, like your website says.
Right. Exactly.
Thank
Actually,
you for
that was
sharing.
something, yeah. Actually, I'll leave that for next time. Sorry, cool. Thank you, Jessie.
Right. Lord, we just thank you for this time together. And again, Lord, I just pray that as we start to digest some of these harder truths, we know that you're going to bring them to light. You're going to lay all things bare. And we ask for this special grace, Lord, that you would help us to face this reality and not just know about it, but let us be those who do something about it, something to stop it, to put an end to it. We ask that you would give us the authority to do so. And that as more people speak out about this, Lord, especially, Lord, if there's any survivors out there that anything we've said today is resonating with them, I ask that you'd give them the courage to be brave and to come out and to share their story. And that as we do, that there would just be this multitude of voices who are starting to speak forth. And that as we speak forth, Lord, that you would use those in our government system who are working for the kingdom of light to bring forth the evidence that proves what we are saying, Lord. That's been the hardest thing, is to be believed. And so I pray that you would prove us true, that you would show forth the truth in each situation, and that we would at least get that validation to bring comfort to us for the horrific things that we have had to go through. Again, I just bring forward the children, Lord. I ask for a special grace and protection upon them, Lord, that not a single one would be hurt anymore through the act of bestiality, that you would bring forward every site that is selling videos and continuing to victimize individuals through the selling of those videos. We just ask that you would just stop the abuse, and we will trust you to do that. And we ask for that in Jesus' powerful name. Amen.
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 Well, thank you.
Amen to that.
Beautiful.
Yes. Well, I look forward to next week's show and our conversation then.
Yes.
Indeed. Wow. Thank you, Jessie.
Definitely.
Really awesome. And have a beautiful day. I'll
Thank
catch
you.
up with you
Yes.
very
Have a beautiful
soon.
day,
All right.
Jessie.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy, and we'll see you next week.
Yes.
Thanks a
Bye-bye.
lot. Yeah.
Ciao.